insightful session, I kindly request everyone to take a moment to switch your mobile phones to silent mode. This will ensure an uninterrupted and focused environment for our speakers and fellow participants. Your cooperation is greatly appreciated. Thank you. Forensic Science Department is a multidisciplinary subject that encompasses several scientific branches with its focus on being the identification and analysis of physical evidence. The Department of Forensic Science in MESKC was established in the year 2020. The glorious moment was inaugurated by Advocate N. Shamsuddin MLA on 9 February 2021. Our mission is to provide quality forensic science education, advanced scientific analysis, and innovative economic opportunity for the promotion of truth and justice in our community, state, and nation. It's an honor to introduce our esteemed speaker, Dr. Shweta Nidhi, Assistant Professor in the Forensic Science Department at the National Forensic Science University, Goa. Dr. Shweta Nidhi brings a wealth of knowledge and expertise. And today, she will be sharing her thoughts on a topic of great significance, analyzing phylogenetic relationship of anti-CRISPRs and the inclusion of new members within the families. It is with great pleasure that we invite our esteemed session chair, Aishwarya Ma'am, Assistant Professor and Head of the Department of Forensic Science at MES Kalari College, Manarkad, to join us on stage. Professor Aishwarya Ma'am's expertise in the field adds a valuable perspective to our discussion, and we are honored to have her guide through the upcoming session. Please join me in welcoming Aishwarya Ma'am to the stage.
A very good morning, good evening to one and all present here. The topic of the session is analyzing phylogenetic relationships of anti-CRISPRs and the inclusion of new members within the families. And our keynote speaker of this plenary session is Dr. Shweta Nidhi, an esteemed Assistant Professor of Forensic Biology who brings a wealth of expertise and a fervent commitment to advancing the intersection of genomics, bioinformatics, and forensic sciences. With her distinguished academic background culminating in a PhD in genomics, bioinformatics from Aix-Marseille University in November 2021, Dr. Nidhi has dedicated her career to unraveling the intricate relationship between technology and biology. Driven by a profound passion for understanding complex biological processes, Dr. Nidhi's doctoral research focused on ancestral sequence reconstruction and profiling of anti-CRISPR proteins. As the in charge of the Forensic Biology Laboratory at National Forensic Science University, Goa campus, Dr. Nidhi leads both theoretical and laboratory classes, delving into the meticulous analysis of biological samples. A seasoned academician and researcher, she has not only contributed significantly to the field of forensic biology, but has also actively engaged in administrative roles. Her dedication to knowledge dissemination is evident through her leadership in conducting webinars and workshops, fostering collaboration between academia and practitioners. In summary, Dr. Nidhi is a dynamic and accomplished professional, seamlessly blending her expertise in genomics, bioinformatics, and forensic biology. Her participation in the upcoming roundtable discussion on sexual assault investigations promises to enrich the discourse with her unique insights and wealth of expertise in the field. Without further ado, I would like to welcome our speaker of the day, Dr. Shweta Nidhi, for the plenary session. Ma'am, please.
Very good afternoon to all of you. The session just after lunch is, I will try to keep you awake. That's I can promise. I'm Dr. Shweta Nidhi. I was asking Madam Aishwarya that who all will be my target students, so that I can go in depth in biology. Otherwise, I will try to sail on it, so that you keep all of you on track with my presentation. So before I move on to explain my work, my research work, and my recent exploration, I would say, in microbiology and microbial forensics, I would like to thank Principal MES College for giving me this platform. I would also like to thank Aishwarya Madam, Harita Madam, and Sir Akshay Sir. Akshay. So for giving me platform, not only platform, making me come here, seeing everything around is suitable, making taking care of each and every point. Madam, you are comfortable and everything. So thank you so much. And now with this, let me start with my presentation with a question. Who all know about the genetic editing system? Have you heard about CRISPR-Cas system? Okay. Have you heard about 2020 Nobel Prize winner's name? No. Okay. It's not a problem. It's not a problem. The 2020 Nobel Prize went to 2 female scientists for CRISPR-Cas system. And CRISPR-Cas system is something in layman's language, if I explain, that it's an immune system. It's an immune system. You know what is immune system? When you fall, when you fall in fever, your body cells, they fight back. That's an immune system. Similar system exists in bacteria. Right? So there are 2 types of immune system. The first immune system is innate immune system, which you get from your mother. Innate immune system. And there is the second type is adaptive immune system. The adaptive immune system is which you develop according to your surrounding. Is it okay? Similar is the immune system. Earlier it was not known that there is any immune system in microorganisms, but with the help of these 2 scientists, we got to know that there are immune system and not innate, it's adaptive immune system. And the adaptive immune system, when I say, I mean that the immune system is developing and updating according to the surrounding in microorganisms. It was not possible until this groundbreaking research. Okay, I can say it is finding. Okay, so these 2 scientists were awarded Nobel Prize. You would say, ma'am, why you are so much interested? Dear, I am not so much interested until the. Can we move to the next slide? I am not so much interested. The world is. Why? Because you see here, this is the recent editorial in the morning, I just pasted it here, is 23 January 2024, Solvias to perform release testing on world's first CRISPR-based gene editing therapy. So the therapy, the CRISPR-Cas technology has been used for gene editing, and the green flag has been given for sickle cell anemia. So you all know sickle cell anemia is a genetic disease. It happens due to mutation of one nucleotide, and up till now there was no cure of it until the CRISPR-Cas system has been given a green flag to perform genetic engineering and edit the mutated base pair and cure sickle cell anemia. That is why I am interested in it. Right? And You can say fortunately or unfortunately. Why I say fortunately? Because I am directly linked to this topic, because it was my PhD topic, studying on CRISPR-Cas system. Unfortunately, why I say? Because it is huge. The number of papers which are published in CRISPR-Cas system is one of the, I would say, few of the research work which is being sought these days, right? Because it is translational, it is gene editing, right? So both ways I'm fortunate, unfortunate. I mean, the maximum number of reading which I have to do for this is huge, right? And you'll think why, so I'll start. I've prepared the presentation in two phases. The first phase I'll talk about my PhD work, and the second phase I'll talk about my introduction, my project which is going in forensic science, especially in microbial forensics. Okay? And I'll talk about that work also here in the next phase, right? But first, let me introduce you to CRISPR-Cas system. So you see, that's the recent, the fresh editorial which was in the news. Then there is stem cell editing which is being done by CRISPR-Cas system. And then the cure for HIV has been given a green flag with the help of CRISPR-Cas system. So why you should know is now you know, right? Now, students at the back will be like, ma'am, you're talking about CRISPR-Cas system, but would you introduce me CRISPR-Cas system, what it is? Then only we can understand the application. So the CRISPR-Cas system, is CRISPR, CRISPR, clustered, repetitive, interspersed, palindromic repeats sequence, okay? And these sequences are basically nucleotide sequences repeated in bacterial genome. And what is Cas? Madam, Cas is the protein which is associated with CRISPR. So basically you can say that, ma'am, CRISPR and Cas, they occur together in a bacterial host system. And where is it seen, ma'am? It is seen in bacteria and archaea, okay, archaea. Here you can see the diagram. See, what happens is, this is the cell membrane of bacteria which is acting as a host. This is the virus. A virus which affects bacteria is known as, I can expect this answer from forensic science student. A virus which affects bacteria is known as, very good. You are all from forensic science, right? Don't say chemistry, otherwise I'll be very good. Right. It's a bacteriophage, right answer. A bacteriophage is transferring the DNA, the genome in it, the genome is being transferred, and when you see the genome is entering the cell, you see this is the cassette which I was talking about. These are the CRISPR sequences and these are the Cas genes. Now what is happening is, the sequence is integrated in the CRISPR. Okay, so this new sequence will be integrated in this sequence of host, and the moment it integrates in the host, what is done is, it keeps it as a memory. So the bacteria, the host, keeps the sequence from the virus as a memory. Now what is happening is, in our immune system, why do we need memory? Memory is a very important characteristics of immune system, as you all know. If you do not keep memory of the foreign particle entering the cell, you will not be able to get the secondary immune response, which is fast than primary immune response, right? That is what was done in the case of corona, right? And it is done in the case of all the vaccines. You create memory cells, right? And the memory cell, when I talk, it is which cell? It is which cell in the body is responsible for keeping the memory of the immune system? Anybody? Is it the B cell? Is it the T cell? Is it the B cell? B cell. Which particular B cell? Don't worry. Look through it. Okay? I give you this as a homework. Look through it. Okay? Which cell is responsible for keeping the memory of infection? Dear, if the memory of the infection is not kept, you'll fall prey to the infections very easily. Right? Is it? Is no madam, but well tried. Is it? Loud. I'm growing old. T lymphocytes. No dear. No dear. But well tried. So now you see here. So coming back to the memory, you see what happens is the memory is kept here. Now you will say, what happens, ma'am? If a bacteria keeps a memory of virus, what will happen? There, in second infection or reinfection, the bacteria synthesizes complementary of the same sequences. I mean to say, the gene is transcribed, the mRNA is formed, the CRISPR RNA is formed, and these CRISPR RNAs are very deadly. You know why? Because these CRISPR RNA will go and upon reinfection, it will bind to the new genes which are entering and do not let the transcription of new viruses happen. Do you understand that now? Right? So upon let's say upon reinfection, new genes are being entered, and these genes will be the same genes which were entered before. Now we have the mRNA existing in the cytoplasm of the host. The moment the new virus enters, infects, the gene enters, you have the RNA, you have the DNA, the RNA-DNA complements, and what happens is the stopping of the transcription of viral genes. Right? If the transcription doesn't happen, that means there is no translation and translation, no viral proteins are synthesized, it cannot pack, it cannot come out of the cell, and it cannot infect. Do you understand now? So that is how the CRISPR-Cas system, why I am spending so much time in CRISPR-Cas system, because I am going to tell you how is the battle going on between viruses and bacteria. It is very interesting if you read. You know why? Because you would say, ma'am, you say this is the battle of virus, you can say bacteria not letting virus infect, but you see bacteria is also very smart. That's nature. So now it has evolved such a way that it doesn't let the virus evolve such a way it doesn't let the CRISPR recognize its gene sequences. Are you understanding what I'm saying? That means, ma'am, if earlier CRISPR was able to recognize and keep a memory of virus sequences, now the viruses have evolved such that they are not even allowing the CRISPR to recognize the viral sequences. And that is what we called as a evolutionary battle between viruses and bacteria which is going on. Right? So it is like gaining of nuclear power. So one country gets 200 nuclear bombs made, the other country has to by default make 250. Do you know why? In order to supersede the defense system, right? And keep one updated. So that is why it's a fight of battle between the organisms, right? So you will say, ma'am, okay, bacteria has a defense system, adaptive defense system known as CRISPR system. What does virus evolved into? Virus got a protein which is known as anti-CRISPR protein. Okay? So anti-CRISPR means against CRISPR. What it will do is, you see here in the CRISPR-Cas system what is happening, this is CRISPR RNA and this is Cas protein. Together it will form a complex, and when there is a new gene entering, the gene will be, you see this is the viral DNA, and this viral DNA is bound by the CRISPR RNA, and the moment the binding happens, the protein which you see in blue is a Cas protein. The Cas protein is a scissor-like protein. It cuts the new DNA. So gone, viral gone. right? No infection of virus. But dear, I told you about the evolutionary fight which is happening. The evolutionary fight is happening between the bacteria and virus, and this is the result of, or you can say this is the virus fighting back, which is known as anti-CRISPR. And this anti-CRISPR is, in their gene, what they did was they made it such that they can synthesize ACR, anti-CRISPR protein, ACR1, ACR2, ACR2C3, ACR2. These are all types of anti-CRISPR. We do not go into details of what are the types, how are they classified. No, not necessary. What we are importantly getting into is how they work on. Ma'am, they just do not let the Cas protein cut the DNA. Okay? You see here, the Cas protein is Cas here. What is the purple one is the anti-CRISPR. And they are not cutting the viral DNA. That means the virus is happy being alive in bacteria. You understand? So that is the fight which is going on. Now I come to my work. So my work was, when I started my work was 2016. And then anti-CRISPR was not known as much. There were only 20 to 30 anti-CRISPRs known. So my work was to find out more anti-CRISPRs. You will say, ma'am, what will be the effect you find more anti-CRISPR? See, if you find anti-CRISPRs acts as a regulator of CRISPR-Cas system. If you are using CRISPR-Cas system as a genetic and editing tool, you will also need a regulator. It's just like a fan, right? You switch it on, you leave it. No, ma'am, if I have to have a speed of 2, 3, 4, that's a regulator, right? That's a function of regulator. You need a regulator in an editing system. If you do not use regulator in an editing system, that means you are letting it go, and so it will go and cut your genome places where not it is needed. Understand? So anti-CRISPR is important. So my work was, see, the objective was that you have to use two mechanisms. The first method was ancestral sequence reconstruction. The second method which I used was hidden Markov model. Both are statistical, both are algorithms. So both algorithms are used for fetching out new anti-CRISPR proteins from the metagenome, which is environmental metagenome, human microbiome reference genome, and NCBI data. Okay. So these two tools I have used. You will ask me, why did I use, ma'am, anti-CRISPR sequence reconstruction? Because ancestral sequence reconstruction. Because ancestral sequence reconstruction is the most, I can say, it will tell you most about the evolution of a particular protein if you are studying. Okay. So you want to study the evolutionary timeline. You take a protein, you build ancestor sequence of it, and you fetch all the sequences, and then you align them. Then you understand, ma'am, this sequence at this position has gone this much evolution from alanine until, you can say, histidine. So that is the importance of ancestral sequence reconstruction. So on the same line, I started doing it, and my result was first of all, I'll discuss my the steps which I followed was at that time only few number of anti-CRISPRs were there. I collected all those anti-CRISPR sequences, then I aligned them, and after aligning them, I made the ancestral sequence using ancestral sequence of all the sequence which were available at that time. Those ancestral sequences were then blast into these three sequences. BLAST is if you have not studied, is a sequence alignment tool wherein you use your sequence to find out similar sequence in a database. Okay, so I used BLAST. BLAST is basic local alignment sequence alignment tool. So then I did, what is this? What is this? If anybody can tell me. You see? Anybody knows? Yes, sir? No, take a guess. No, I will not eat you all. I had my lunch. Please take a guess. Take a guess. It is? One can hear?
What are you saying?
It's a vector? No dear, it's not a vector. It's not. Was it? It's looking like a tree to me. Is it looking like a tree to you? No? It's a phylogenetic tree, dear. It's a phylogenetic tree. You know what is phylogenetic tree? If I take 10 of your generations back from you, okay? I take all their particular protein gene sequences and align them, and you will see all these genes from all of your 10 generation will align in the same clade, we say, same family, we say, and that is how we know that you all belong to the same family. Do you know that? That's a tool for phylogeny. So that's a tool I made. You know why? Because these, what you see in the black, do not go into details because those were the SSN numbers. So I will focus on these black sequences. These are the existing anti-CRISPR sequences, and these are the new sequences which we found. Okay, and what is this, ma'am? ACRF, ACR2, these are the different families in which we found new sequences, and these new sequences were from bacteria, archaea, and all those sequences, I will say, were the probable sequences we found, new sequences which anybody did not found. So we found these sequences. You will say, ma'am, you found new sequences. What you are going to do with these new anti-CRISPR family sequences? First of all, I aligned them with the known ones. So you see, if they align together, that means they are from the same family. That's the concept. If you all sit with the same, flock, birds, what do you say? Birds of same flock together, right? So it's like a same concept. If you are friends, you be together, right? That's how. If you are family, you be together. That's how. You new anti-CRISPRs, they have cladded into the same family. Understood? Now, this was something which we did in 2017 and 18, and then it was something which was like groundbreaking. It was good research, you can say. Then we had to again do some tests. Just being cladding together doesn't confirm that these are new anti-CRISPR proteins. Then what we did, we aligned. See, I told you align sequences. What we did, these are the new sequences, these are the old sequences, we align together. What is here is the yellow lines which you see are particular amino acids common in new and old both. That means we have found the same ones. Yes or no? So you see, these are the common amino acids which are similar. Right? So that again confirmed our work that yes, we have found potential anti-CRISPRs which nobody has found up till now. Now what we are going to do with this, ma'am? We thought if we have found something, let's look the gene of that protein. Let's look to the genome of it. And when we are seeing the genome where this particular gene of the protein was, we saw that it was surrounded by genes which are important has an important role in providing immunity. Like what? Ma'am, here you see there is a hypothetical protein, right? This is the protein which we found was putative anti-CRISPR. Until unless you do in vitro test, you call whatever you have found as a putative, okay, or prospective. So this is the putative anti-CRISPR belonging to F6 family. Then there is integrase, then there is Duff-like family, then there is transcription regulator. Now you see, integrase is a protein which helps the phage integrate into the host, right? So this is something very interesting. And we were like, yes, we have found something. What is to be done now? Now, doing this much of work took me 3 years and my fellowship ended. Right? So then I asked my supervisor, what should I do? He said, you club the work and just present it like that. In vitro, we will see later on. So the in vitro work still awaits. Okay. So that is a harsh reality. I think madam would the research, ma'am would show you, sir, ma'am would show you what we see. Everything is not which we can see. There are things which in research you will not only the research work, the scientific caliber, the aptitude you inculcate, but there are some things which you have to really tackle as a scientist, right? I'm talking in regards to money, right? So we stopped here because money was sought, and my fellowship got over for 3 years, and then we got publication with this and a review paper publication with this, and then this work was stopped. You will say, ma'am, what you are doing now? You are in forensic science. You are using this basic concept, basic science. You know what? In forensic science, you all are students from forensic science. Let me tell you, forensic science, I have been in the field of forensic science in 5 years, and I'll tell you, if you can amalgamate any science, use tools and technology to provide any insight and help the criminal justice system, it comes under the ambit of forensic science. Right? You all agree with me? Right? So I started exploring why not use CRISPR-Cas system in forensic science. Can we use it? Can we use it? Still, I am exploring this field, and why I am discussing the exploration part, because there are 3 motto of this MESCON conference is first is explore. So I happen to discuss my work and relate it with it. So if you are interested in CRISPR-Cas system and exploring the application of CRISPR-Cas system in forensic science, you are invited to work along with me, and together we can explore. Already there are 2 research work. I mean, I'll not say research work. People have started exploring again and putting review papers on CRISPR-Cas system and forensic science. Nothing much. Okay, so it's still a new field. So those who are interested in basic sciences and are ready to hop on the using CRISPR-Cas system editing system in forensic science can do so. Why? Because have you heard of ghost profiles? You know about ghost profiles? You have studied DNA profiling? Okay, so what do you do in DNA profiling? You do STR typing, right? With this CRISPR-Cas system, I am just telling you, CRISPR-Cas system has the ability to edit the STR profile, which serves as an individualization between 2 characters. That means if my STR profiling, I use CRISPR-Cas system, I can edit the STR profile, and you will never know that I existed there at the crime scene. So all the basics of forensic biology fall short. You understand me? If I edit my sequences and you are expecting that ma'am was present at the crime scene, I edit the my sequences, you will be never able to find out whether I was present with my biological evidences, right? One of the prospect I am showing, but it has several limitations to it, but it can happen, right? So you can explore CRISPR-Cas system in forensic science. Now, all of you are awake or slept? Awake? Yes, please breathe. Now, that's what I discussed, and application of CRISPR-Cas in forensic science. I will not go in details of it because I know that there are students from chemistry and physics also sitting here. So how it helps, I will not go in detail. Let me just directly, this is my concern which I was talking about here, ghost DNA profiles by modification and alteration of the genetic markers. So it is scary to the forensic scientists now these days because CRISPR-Cas system has a lot in it, right? And so just let me move to I told you, I promised you I will discuss the second phase of it. The second phase is related to microbial forensic. Students interested in microbiology here? No? If you are not, I will make you interested with this work. So it's good that you are not interested. Someone said yes, but I heard. And that was a slight, yes ma'am. No worries. Now, so what is this work about? See, I am holding this mic. What am I transferring to according to Locard's principle of exchange? Sweat? Sweat. And anything else? Anything else? I'm putting the epithelial cells. My epithelial cells which are present in hand, I'm putting it here. And I'm also putting the microbiota. My hand microbiota is different from madam's hand microbiota, is different from madam's hand microbiota and sir's hand microbiota. So I'm transferring my microbiota here, and it will remain after this conference until someone wipes it out with the the sterile or disinfectant or the, you can say, alcohol, right? It will remain here like that. It will remain here. And what good it is? It is of goodness if you know that part. What we did was, you see, the first objective of our work was to characterize and individualize the suspect microbial community with the crime scene. So basically, you can link me with my microbial community with the presence here, that I was present here. How can you do that? The first step, and this work was being done by my student who is sitting here. So I'll show her picture. She has taken a lot of efforts to do all of its work, because in microbiology, those little ones, they really do not grow easily, right? You have to take care of them like babies. Right? So you see number of plates which she has almost used 100 to 200 plates for cultivating the microbes. Right? I'll explain. So there's what she is doing is, what we did was, we took two students, one male, one female. We swabbed the fingers, each finger, okay? And after swabbing each finger, but not all, fingertips, okay? So we swabbed fingertips, and we used different swabbing, the swab for different fingers, okay? Not the same one. So let's say for thumb, it's different. For the index finger, it is different. So for different, we used different swab. Then this is the person who has volunteered to come for this research work, and that's the person's laptop we are swabbing. And then after swabbing it, we have kept it in a, according to the crime scene management protocol, we carry the biological evidence in which fluid, so that it do not get degraded. It is alcohol. We carry alcohol. We carry samples in alcohol. Saline, correct. Very good. It's saline solution. Why not alcohol? Why not alcohol? Yes, it degrades. Alcohol degrades, right? We will not carry that. So it's saline solution, ma'am. And after carrying it, we have taken two types of medium to calculate to grow the bacteria. One was nutrient medium, which is general medium. The second was specific to gram-negative bacteria, which you see in red color. That is MacConkey agar. Heard about it? MacConkey, okay? So those which are general medium, gram-positive, gram-negative, they both grow. Those which are only gram-negative will grow in the red ones. Then after that, and this is the laminar airflow where she is working. She's my dissertation student, and she started working here. And I'm the one who was taking the photo where she was working, and this is the last months where she was working here. And then I will show you only one test plate, because we are compiling this work and we cannot show you the results. Right? Otherwise, this work and the amount of labor and money has gone in this work will go waste if I discuss this with you. Right? But the test plate is very interesting. The test plate has shown us different colonies in this nutrient medium. Right? Now here it is not visible, but that's the colony I am interested in. That's the colony, This is the plate of the person's right hand fingertip. That means the swab from the right hand fingertip, and that has been grown in the medium. Why it is interesting is we could see this colony here is a yellow colored colony. Only one colony which we got was yellow colored. You know, yellow colored, if you have studied about microbiology, what are those species which are yellow colored? If you go through it, one of the species is Staphylococcus aureus, and Staphylococcus aureus is the one which causes pimples. Heard about it? It causes pimples, right? So I saw the test plate and I was like, if everything is good, and mind it, this test plates have controls, negative and positive both. So if the result is here, I can show you, replicate this and show you in 3 or 4 or 5 same test plates, right? So we have put positive plates, we have put negative plates, right? So I saw the plate, she came to me, ma'am, this is the plate. I saw the plate and I was like, what is this colony look like yellow? Did you search it? Well, ma'am, I did not search. I say, the volunteer is he or she having pimples somehow? And she was like, yes ma'am, how do you know? I say, I don't know. The plate talks. The plate is talking, right? And what I want to say with this research work of mine is that I hope I'm not exceeding the time. Okay, ma'am is looking at the watch. So I want to just say that, see, you can relate the microbiota of individual with the crime scene, right? With the crime scene, and you can really individualize. But there are various factors, as in the person's, what are the limitation in microbial forensic is the lifestyle of the person, right? The environmental microbes which are present, right? So, but you have to find the signature microbiota of a particular individual. Understand? And then you are good to go. Just like you are good to go for DNA. You go for DNA profiling, you go for microbiota profiling. You know, in DNA profiling, you have a limitation that, ma'am, at crime scene, the DNA, you find less amount of DNA somewhere. But in microbiota, one colony, there will be like almost 10,000 cells. Happy. Do you understand that? So it is a win-win situation. That's our work has been compiled. The data has been okay. After this, just only morphological characteristic will not help and will not satisfy the curiosity of the scientific community. If I put the paper like this, the editor will throw the paper just right away. So I went to my sequencing, right? So genome sequencing was done, and the genome sequencing of all the bacteria has been accumulated. Now we are trying to do what? Now we are trying to find out the significance of the signature microbiota of the thumb, the index finger, all the fingers along with the laptop, right? And we also see that what percentage is being transferred, and is there any signature microbiota which is being transferred, and can I link that, yes, this laptop is of that particular person? If yes, then it helps, right? That's the forensic application of it, right? So that's my work, which has been almost completed. And the second one has just started, which I was discussing in the morning. One of the students presented, and I was interested in entomology of, entomology and its application in forensic science. You know what is bromodilon? It has a significance from South India. In bromodilon is a common compound which is found in a rat poison. And most of the suicidal attempts and death happens consuming the rat poison. Right? And it goes undetected when their post-mortem is done. Right? So we were thinking, let's say if the body has consumed bromodilon or rat poison and has been thrown, you do not recover the body remains. Right? Or it has been degraded. You recover it after 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, 4 months. Ma'am, the availability of the bromidilon would have been degraded in the body. In the body you will not be able to find. But what if we find it in the insects which has been present in the corpse, right? So we started working on that, and I told you, I discussed in the morning also, those who were present in the morning session, the student who are discussing the entomology, my dear student, entomology is very difficult in the sense because, ma'am, in entomology, if you set up a practical no, there are difficulties. You know why? I'll tell you. In this case, what we use is a meat sample. Okay? And we keep the meat sample, inject bromidilon in it, and then we let the flies come, okay? And we note the timing, the humidity, the temperature. But the moment we keep the meat sample, our students were suffering from the meat samples. The one day morning we keep it, the next morning it vanished. You know why? Because then we were like, again, we were doing forensic analysis. Where did the meat sample go? And we recovered that meat sample around 500 meters from the location, and a dog took the meat sample there. It was all lying in the soil. So that went waste. Right? Then again, so setting up entomology experiments are real tough. But what we have done is, we have devised a method. We have put a cage and we are putting the meat samples there, injecting bromidilon. But also here what is happening is bromidilon is present in rat poison. So to conduct a sample, you have to have a pure bromidilon. So pure bromidilon, if you order from pure bromidilon, it is like 10 grams is almost 10,000 rupees. So it's better to take rat poison. So we did what was, we extracted bromidilon from rat poison using TLC. Right? We use TLC extracted bromidilon from there, and now our bromidilon is in pure concentration. Not I'll say pure concentration, then again it becomes relative. We have extracted bromidilon, now we are injecting it into the meat samples and noting the growth of the life cycle of insects. So that is the second work, and this has been presented. And now I will try to sum up with this my last slide, which is, why do you have to unlock the forensic science as a future science? Because forensic science is finally the criminal justice system, helping the criminal justice system, and no other science can help criminal justice system. So that is important. What are the pillars forensic science is based on? The pillars will be the technological advances. Dear, the forensic science, anybody says me, whom do you prefer? A basic science student as your student or a forensic science student? I said forensic science student, although I am from basic science. You know why? Because I was talking to Harita ma'am, and she said, ma'am, that passion is there because forensic science, we know students knowing that there are less scope of forensic science, still choosing forensic science is something, and also they keep them technologically advanced. They keep on reading about the instrumentation, what is happening, what is not, because everything is application. Yes or no? Everything is application in it. So technological advancement is there. You explore the cutting edge technologies, AI, ML, and you have to transform the methods of forensic investigation. Okay? And the second pillar is interdisciplinary collaboration. So interdisciplinary collaboration, chemistry, physics, biology, all these sciences have to have a department of forensic science. I feel so. Because I was from I'm from biotechnology basically, but what I like about forensic science is it is so translational. In biotechnology, you start working, you have competition, you devise your, something to devise new research will take time, but in forensic science, less competition, And anything and everything you help in providing criminal justice system, in helping criminal justice system solve a particular case comes under the ambit of forensic science. So those students sitting here from chemistry department, physics department, biology department, history department, okay, they all have applications, and they all can become a forensic science just by linking your science with forensic science. Okay. Now the last one will be the methodologies. See, this is where we have to focus as a scientist, or you call as a scientist, you call as a research scholar, whatever you call as a student, teacher. You have to discuss innovative approaches. Without innovation, without innovation, there is, because as technology is growing, innovation has to understand the need of a particular era, right? So as here AI ML you see here that the crime, the type of crime which has been committed has way past gone the era of the type of crime which used to happen 10 or 100 years back, or let's say 50 years back, right? Type of crime has changed. So innovate according to, you cannot use outdated methods now, right? You have to change your approach and your understanding. So technological advancement, innovative research and collaborative work will keep forensic science alive and prospering. Thank you so much.
Now the session is open for discussions. So participants may ask any questions to the speaker. If you have any questions, please raise your hand.
Good afternoon, ma'am. So yesterday when I read about this topic, I read a word named Sherlock technology. So can you please explain what it is?
Sherlock technologies in CRISPR-Cas. You are interested in CRISPR-Cas system? Let us discuss this off stage, off dais. Okay, you come to me. I discuss Sherlock the technology with you in detail using a copy and pen. Okay.
Any other question?
Good evening, ma'am. First of all, I want to convey my heartfelt gratitude, as it was a very fruitful and an interesting session for me. To be frank, I was not supposed to attend this section as I was in a hurry to go back to my home. But now I realize it was a good decision to attend your class. And my question is that in the very first slide of your presentation, you had just mentioned that CRISPR-Cas system has a future in HIV curing. But the thing is that we have studied that HIV is a disease which is affecting our immunity system by the retrovirus, and it is an incurable disease. Can you please explain?
Yes, CRISPR-Cas system has application in HIV curing, because in HIV works how? It is a virus which hijacks your immune system, right? And if you ask me one particular way HIV affects, I cannot say. There are multiple ways the HIV affects. But if you, let's say, I'll give you one example. Let's say HIV virus reacts and understands that a cell membrane has a receptor to which the virus can bind and enter into the cell. Now what you have to do is, they modify the membrane such that the HIV virus is not able to recognize even the receptor and enter the cell, right? So here what you do is, you edit the receptor using CRISPR-Cas system, right? And you edit the protein as such that the membrane receptor is not, the structure of it changes and it is not being recognized by the immunovirus. And now it cannot enter the cell, right? So that's how the genome editing is helping in one way, I'll say one way it is, right? In stopping the virus entering the cell. And the moment the virus doesn't enter the cell, that means that it has secured, it has kept the virus outside, right? Virus injection. If you stop the virus injection, it is like half of the work is done. But the injection happened, then you cannot, you keep on looking virus where it has spread. If it has passed the stagnant level and it has multiplied and divided and spread into different cells, it's difficult to find out. But if you stop the injection of the virus DNA into the cell, it is great. That's how CRISPR helps. Yes?
Any other questions?
Ma'am, thank you for conducting the section.
Thank you.
Ma'am, I have doubt regarding the entomology section.
Please ask.
Okay. When you said like you have injected the poison into the meat, right? So in the life system when it is compared, the metabolism is occurring. So whether it would be the concentration of life cycle is forming, right? On the concentration on the meat. So it would affect the, when considered to the forensic investigation, whether it would affect the study.
You want to know that if it is injected in the,
If it is injected in the live meat, there is no metabolism or distribution like that.
I got your point. That's how one of my students, so there is a member of 5 students where we are working. One of the students asked the same question. I'll explain you how. Thank you for that. It's a good question. That means you were awake and you were listening. The question is that, madam, if you take a meat sample and you inject the chemical in it, it is not going to disintegrate. It will not be metabolized, obviously, because the sample is a meat sample, right? It is not your body sample, right? So that again requires an ethical consideration wherein I can perform a bromidolone injection into a live samples, right? That is another part of research work wherein you understand you can think so much, but what you try to bring at the ground level requires a bit of work, but that is my upcoming motive of that paper, right? But what effect will, what I am targeting with this dead meat is to see whether I can calculate the post-mortem index with the help of insects. Do you understand? And someone asked me, ma'am, if I want to detect a particular toxin in, you asked me, no? If I want to detect a particular toxin in insect feeding on a dead corpse, how can we do? If you want to detect the toxin in the insect, you have to take the saliva or the gut, okay? You take gut fluid and then you do GCMS. When you do GCMS, you find out with the data library, you will almost find out which molecule is responsible or present in the gut microbiota, gut fluid. Okay, so that 2 things we do. But here, what we are doing is we are targeting not the meat, we are targeting the insect. So they are alive, we are happy. Right? They are not under the ethical committee. So right, we work on that. Okay.
Any other question?
Ma'am, with respect to your study wherein you focused on the epithelial cells and microbiota from a single individual from different surfaces.
Yes.
So with my limited understanding, I have finding a logical confusion in that particular situation. So when you compare that to a real life scenario,
Yes.
multiple individuals touching a particular surface, overlap of a certain microbiota, how do we individualize from that? Also, what is the time or the persistence of a certain family of microbiota on a particular surface? Have there been any study with respect to persistence of microbiota in a specific area?
Thank you so much. I'll answer two of your questions one by one. Okay. The first question is, madam, the mixing of samples, ma'am is saying. Ma'am, it's the same mic is being held by several people, right? But I said, what happens, ma'am? We have already a data bank of the skin profile of a human individual, and in skin profile and the hand profile, that whatever is common in all throughout individual, we have data bank. So what we do is we just do a comparative analysis of microbiota which we have got from a particular individual, and we compare it and just sort it out and just remove it, and then that is the signature microbiota of that particular individual, right? And that is same we see in the laptop, whether it is there or not, and then we're doing significance test, and then that one, right? Did I answer? Okay. Now, second is, that is the objective of why I shifted my work to microbes, is the persistence of it. Because the persistence of microorganism is far more than any DNA, epithelial cell or DNA can survive at the crime scene. Right? The DNA can be degraded easily with the, if you touch the samples 10 times or multiple times. I don't have a number yet. You see, multiple times the DNA is prone to degradation, but the microbes will not. So you say, ma'am, 1 month DNA or microbe, I say microbes, right? Until unless there are factors which affect, until it's swapped, and until it's cleaned, right? So that is the thing.
Ma'am, I have a question.
Yes.
You said that in the case of microbial forensics, endotoxicology, that the toxins will be present in the gut of microbes.
Yes.
Isn't it? We can identify which toxins is that. So, by analyzing the components of gut components of these microbes feeding the toxins to the meat, can we do any individualization for certain toxins, or any group of family of microbes feeding certain toxins, or anything like that?
We can do gut microbiota is something which is being explored at a speed, because gut micro, they have related Alzheimer's with gut microbiota. Can you imagine? So that potential it has. So we can explore that together.
So we can identify the poison or whatever toxins by simply analyzing the microbes.
Yes. There are certain microbes also which will grow on particular poisons. We can do that also.
Yes. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much. I think there's no more questions.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am, for this insightful session. Now, ladies and gentlemen, as we continue our journey through the realm of knowledge, it's a distinct pleasure to invite back to the stage our esteemed speaker, Dr. Shweta Nidhi. In recognition of your valuable contributions, we would like to extend our sincere appreciation and present you with a token of honor. I kindly request Shweta Nidhi ma'am to join us on stage to receive the small token as a symbol of our gratitude and admiration for her expertise. I invite Dr. Azhar, Assistant Professor, Department of Commerce, to join us on stage for this honorable task. Shweta Nidhi for your enlightening presentation, and we look forward to more insights from you in the future. Now it's our pleasure to invite Aishwarya ma'am to receive a token of appreciation, and I would like to invite Dr. Azhar sir to present the token of appreciation. Thank you, sir, and thank you, ma'am, for gracing us with your presence and expertise. Thank you for fantabulously chairing our last technical session of the day. With great pleasure, I extend an invitation to Muhammad Arshad sir, Assistant Professor in the Department of Forensic Science at MES Kalari College, to step forward and deliver the vote of thanks for the session. Arshad sir's insights and appreciation will undoubtedly encapsulate the essence of our collective gratitude.
Esteemed speaker, dedicated chair, and beloved audience. It is with great pleasure and a profound sense of gratitude that I stand before you today to express our deepest appreciation to Dr. Sweta Nidhi for her exceptional contribution to MESCON 2024. Dr. Sweta Nidhi has not only shared her extensive knowledge, but has also ignited a spark of inspiration among us. The profound insights provided in her presentation have undoubtedly left an indelible mark on our collective understanding. In the spirit of fostering collaboration and advancing the frontiers of our knowledge, I extend my sincere thanks to Dr. Sweta Nidhi for being a driving force in this intellectual journey. Her unwavering dedication to the advancement of the field is truly commendable. I also express my